Today is Saturday, September 14th. We're going beyond the initial headlines and polls after Tuesday night's high-stakes presidential debate with guests from both sides of the aisle. We'll take a closer look at what Harris and Trump did well, where they each failed, and ultimately whether any of it will matter come November. In a bit, you'll hear from Republican strategist and senior CNN political commentator Scott Jennings. But first up, the hosts of Pantsuit Politics, a popular podcast for real conversations about politics, democracy, and the news, while still treating each other like thoughtful human beings. Beth Silvers and Stewart Holland start us off with analysis from the Democrat side. Welcome to the Newsworthy Special Edition Saturday, when we sit down with a different expert or celebrity every Saturday to talk about something in the news. Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for our regular episodes, where we provide all the day's news in 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. It's now time for today's Special Edition Saturday. Stewart Holland and Beth Silvers, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
So first, I'd love to just get your initial reaction to Tuesday night's debate. Sarah, let's start with you.
Oh, I thought it was great. I thought Vice President Harris was abundantly prepared, and that quickly became very obvious.
How did you feel at the end of it, Beth?
I was really impressed with how targeted she was with her remarks. I think she's very carefully decided who she's speaking to in this election. And I think those are two groups. One are people like me who maybe used to be Republicans or more like never Trump voters. And so you heard that in the national security themes that she hammered home. She talked a lot about democracy. She said several times, there's a place for you in our campaign, to people who don't think of themselves as Democrats. And I think the other group are people who are really struggling right now and want to hear, how are you going to make my life better? And so when she talks about the housing allowance for first-time home buyers, tax credits for people with young children, those types of very specific messages, I think, speak to that audience. It's hard to represent any party when there are only two for a country as big and diverse as ours. And so she's clearly prioritized the groups that she really needs to win over in this election. And I was impressed with how well she did that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Beth, knowing that you're closer to the independent side of things. And I think one moment that has been talked about is when she said that she doesn't, as a prosecutor, she didn't ask her victims if they were Republican or Democrat. She just asked, are you okay? Do you think that spoke to those independent, undecided voters as much as she really hoped? Because there has been some reporting that undecided voters wanted more substance and that she had more sweeping statements. What do you think?
I think it's hard to know because undecided captures so many people. And you can see in data over the last 5, 6, 7 years, more and more people identify as independent. And as more people do that, that becomes an identity too. So under that umbrella of undecided or independent, you have people who just really don't want to say, and it's important to them to be frustrated or discouraged by both parties. I think what she needed to do, and that she did very effectively, was stand on that stage, look like a president, sound like a president, and through all 90 minutes of the debate show that she can handle this job.
Sarah, when Vice President Harris was talking about things like former President Trump's rally size and saying, world leaders are laughing at him, do you think she was purposely trying to get under his skin? And do you think that was a good strategy?
Absolutely. I think she was trying to get under his skin. They said that. Trump's team seemingly knew that that's what was going to happen. And he showed no capacity to avoid those very clear baiting answers. And I do think it was a good strategy, one, because it deflected some heat from the attack she knew was coming. And two, it just is a reflection of his character. Do you want someone as president of the United States who is so easily baited, just so transparently vulnerable to attacks on his ego? And I feel like the answer should be no.
Do you think she did as well as she could have when it comes to economy and immigration, Beth?
I think that she didn't do as much on either of those as she might have planned to, because she so effectively baited Trump into going off topic. The immigration section just became subsumed with the rally size conversation and then him going into the Springfield, Ohio, they're eating the pets meme. And that so overtook the conversation that she didn't have a chance to maybe say everything she had prepared on that subject. I think with the economy, she was really in that zone of, I have to introduce myself. It was early in the debate. I have to introduce myself to people who don't really know me. I have to do a little bit of biography. I have to help people hear, that I do have a plan for them.
Is this election about policies, or is it really about the person and their style?
I think it's about the person and their style. I think it's about generational change. I think it's about grocery prices and vibes and kind of who we are going to be post-COVID. This is really the first election that we've had on the other side of the pandemic. So I think she's been really smart in crafting this turn the page, we're not going back message.
This was the first debate. For Harris specifically, it was the first one-on-one presidential debate. It was especially high stakes for her for reasons we've talked about. Voters don't know her as well as Trump. Do you think that kind of pressure got to her at all, Sarah?
I felt a little bit of nerves when she first came out. But again, totally understandable. She is still a human being. But then once she got into the flow of questions from the moderators, responding to his attacks, taking her notes, you could feel her confidence increase dramatically. As a former prosecutor, and we saw during her time in the Senate, that she is most comfortable in the back and forth.
What's your take on Trump and his allies saying, moderators didn't treat him fairly? Do you think that there's any truth to that, Beth?
When you're complaining about the moderators, it's because you've lost. It is true that the moderators did not fact-check her the way they fact-checked him. And I think there are two components to that. The first component is that what he chooses to lie about and what they chose to address in his lies was so blatant and so obvious that it was important to look in his face and say, but that's not true. So what are we to make of this? The other component with the fact-checking of her is that when you get into fact-checking characterizations of remarks that Trump has made, that's hard. I looked at a nonpartisan fact check of this debate this morning, and there were a couple of his comments that they said she took out of context. But that's tricky because when you read his statements in context, that is often not illuminating for me. He rambles so much, it's hard to tell what he means. He argued with David Muir during the debate about that idea of we lost by a whisker, and he said that was sarcasm. So those are the kinds of more nuanced gray area fact checks that are available on the remarks that she made. And I think that's just different. And that's not the moderator's job in a debate setting. That's Trump's job to say, you took that out of context. Here's what I mean. He can do that, just as she had to do that for the vast majority of incorrect statements that he made during the debate.
Is there a best moment and worst moment that stands out to you, Sarah?
I think that her best moment is when she was speaking with such moral clarity and conviction about reproductive freedom and the way that the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which we can lay clearly at Donald Trump's feet, has affected the lives of American women. I was very emotionally affected by that answer myself. I would also add when she shook his hand, which I thought was just really smart and effective. And from the second it started, really set the tenor.
Beth, what stood out to you?
I totally agree on the best moments, and I would add the foreign policy section. I thought especially when she was talking about our support of Ukraine and who the United States is supposed to be in the world and speaking with specificity about the kind of aid that we're providing to Ukraine, I thought that was excellent. On the worst moment side, I would have liked to hear more about immigration from her. She pivoted to the rally, which was obviously very effective in taking Trump off his game. But David Muir put the question to her fairly. You were responsible for working on the root causes of migration from the Northern Triangle. She has a really good story to tell about that work. That work has been very effective. You can see it in the numbers. It was complicated work. She brought together the private sector with government funds, worked with partners in those nations to get those types of businesses built to help their economies grow. I want her to tell that story because I think it's a really good one for her.
Final thought, Sarah.
I'm just delighted with the debate. I was not nervous. I knew that she was going to prepare and do a good job, and I knew that he is who he has always been and would respond in kind. And so really confirmed in my ideas about both candidates after the debate.
Beth?
I feel like we are so ingrained in America with this negative attitude that it's the lesser of two evils and this is going to be a disaster and it's going to be so depressing and I don't want to watch it. And I feel like she has really turned the page, as she says, on that vibe, that it was on in bars and you saw clips of people reacting live together. That's what this is supposed to be, where we get together and we say, together, how do we feel about these people and what do we want next? And I think she has brought just this infusion of positive spirit and a clear contrast that is really exciting and that I hope has very long legs. You think, does this debate matter? It matters in a bunch of different ways. And I hope that one of them is getting us excited about and interested in elections again.
Next up, the perspective from the other side of the aisle. Republican strategist and CNN senior political commentator Scott Jennings weighs in. But first, a quick break for our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. When was the last time you played? As in, did something really fun just for yourself? Or maybe you wanted to learn something new, even if you're not good at it. Have you given yourself the time and space to try? Since having a kid, I started to remember how fun it can be to learn and play, and watching my 3-year-old do it with ease has inspired me. I'm still working on making time for it, to be honest, because life, but it has become a priority in a good way. So if you're struggling with this kind of thing or aren't sure where to start, therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder. It's something my therapist has reminded me often, and she's such a good guide when it comes to prioritizing what's important, setting boundaries, and just generally being the best and happiest version of myself. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, so it's convenient and flexible. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/newsworthy today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/newsworthy. The Newsworthy is also brought to you by Shopify. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof like Allbirds or Skims, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and on-point marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. As a customer, I've personally experienced the ease of Shopify during checkout. And as a business, I know how important it is to keep things running smoothly. Well, nobody does selling better than Shopify. It's home to the #1 checkout on the planet. So if you're into growing your business better, and you want to be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between, choose Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds, Skims, and many more well-known businesses use. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/newsworthy, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/newsworthy to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/newsworthy. Okay, now to my conversation with Republican strategist Scott Jennings. Scott Jennings, thanks so much for joining us here on the Newsworthy.
Glad to be with you and hear your voice. Thank you.
Well, let's just start with your initial reaction to this debate.
Well, I'm not surprised Trump lost. I mean, he's lost every debate he's ever been in at the presidential general election level. He lost 3 to Hillary. He lost 2 to Biden in 2020. The only debate he ever won was the one in June in which Joe Biden badly malfunctioned. So it wasn't a surprise to me that the snap polls judged him to be the loser. I do think Republicans are disappointed that he didn't take the opportunity to do a better job of going after Harris on her record as vice president or her record from running for president in 2019. I don't think his performance was fatal, but it certainly was a missed opportunity. And my reaction for Harris is she met the plausibility bar. Plausibility as president. I do think she was evasive on the economy. I think she was evasive on immigration. I think Trump won those exchanges in the first 15 minutes on the economy. But really, after that, she pretty much controlled the flow of the debate.
Yet Trump is saying that it was his best performance ever. What do you think of that?
I mean, I don't agree. I do think he had some moments that were fine. Again, the first 15 minutes on the economy, he was great. She started off a little shaky. She looked a little nervous to me. But it was the immigration exchange, interestingly, his best issue, that got him off track because she pivoted out of a question about why haven't you done anything for the last 3.5 years and began to taunt him on his rallies. And instead of just ignoring it, he took that bait and he got upset and he really never got back on track until his closing statement, which he asked the correct question, which is, you've been in for 3.5 years. Why haven't you done anything?
A lot of people talking about Harris was on the offense, Trump was on the defense, and that she purposely tried to get under his skin. What happened there with Trump? I mean, was he not able to stay on point?
This is the difference between Trump, kind of the freewheeler, and Harris sort of executing on a script. He obviously did not have the kind of a game plan that she had. I do think he was fine on the economy. The CNN Snap polling showed afterwards that he went up a couple of points on the economy and she went down a couple of points. You've seen some focus groups in the aftermath. Undecided voters don't think she really answered questions on the economy. But on the whole, she got what she wanted. Trump probably did not get what he wanted.
Yeah. Any other takeaways from a policy perspective?
Well, I think that she is really good at saying she has a plan without saying what the plan is. I mean, saying that I want to lower costs or saying that I want to help you, that's not a plan. That's a goal, and you may want to do those things, but that's different than telling people what you are going to do. I also don't think she really took any responsibility for the Biden-Harris record on the economy, which is very unpopular, or the Biden-Harris record on immigration, which is also unpopular. She got asked about it, but she's just sort of pivoted out of it and evaded and outright ignored the moderators' questions. On the moderators, I thought they came wanting to push Trump, to debate Trump, to fact-check Trump. I did not get the same feeling that they wanted to do the same thing to Harris. In fact, they let her tell some lies and say some things and evade their questions, that they just let it go. Today, Republicans are pretty upset that the moderators were there to more conduct a trial of Trump as opposed to moderate a debate. Now, I tend to agree, but at the same time, you can't really complain about the refs if you're not making your own jump shots. And so it may have been stacked against him, but he accepted this debate, he accepted these moderators, and he knew what was going to happen, and yet it still happened anyways.
And I do have to ask about the pets. What did you make of Trump repeating the claim that immigrants have been eating people's cats?
The cat thing is an aside. It's just part of the fringe discourse. The real question, which he kind of ignored, was, wait a minute, did we really put 20,000 immigrants into a town of 60,000 people? And what happened when that occurred? I think there's actual policy debate to be had there about immigration issue, where are people being located, what are the impacts on communities. He decided to focus on the cats. The real debate is, who's coming in, where are we putting them? How is that impacting the people in those towns? That's the real question I think probably people in Springfield, Ohio, and elsewhere would want to know about.
And you briefly mentioned this earlier, but it does seem that Trump tried to link Harris and Biden as much as possible. So do you think there was some strategy there where Trump did better?
Of course. And he did it on the economy. Right out of the gate, he got her on the economy for about 15 minutes. And I think he won that part of those exchanges. Basically, the more he links her to Biden, the better off he is. You just have to do it efficiently. How are you linked to Biden? You're his vice president. How are you linked to Biden on the economy? You cast the tie-breaking votes. How are you linked to Biden on immigration? Well, you were at least in part responsible for the administration's policy on immigration, and you've got your own statements from the past about wanting a permissive immigration structure. There's a very efficient way to make that case, and I think people are primed to buy it because they really don't like what they've gotten.
And speaking of President Biden, obviously, he faced a lot of criticism in the debate before this one. What's your reaction to those who say Trump this time was the one who was rambling and incoherent at times and is, the oldest candidate?
There's just no comparison to what Biden did in Atlanta and what Trump did last night. I heard someone on TV last night say this was the most devastating debate performance of all time. And that's hyperbolic. That's really not true. Trump lost debates to Hillary Clinton 3 times and still managed to win the Electoral College. So I don't think this was fatal for Trump. I do think it was a missed opportunity. The real question in the days ahead is, are the national polls going to show any degradation for Trump or any pickup for Harris? My instinct is her image will probably go up a little, but will that translate into a 4, 5, or 6 point national lead? I'm skeptical, but I'm in wait and see mode, and I want to see what the data says in the days ahead.
Final thought or takeaway?
Final thought is that it's an extremely close race. I don't think the debate changed that. I do think the debate gave Harris a chance to look like a plausible president. I do think she's still evasive on a couple of big issues. And she did make the statement that she was, quote, generational change. So where I see Harris going is not so much that she'll be a change in policy, but that she's just simply younger. Will voters buy that? Do they want or will they accept merely being younger? Or are they going to need to see something different from her policy-wise than what they've gotten out of Biden? For Trump, it's always a grind. He tends to back into these things. But if he keeps this race nationally pretty close, 1 point, 2 points, tied, he's going to look pretty good in the Electoral College. Remember, 2 months to go. Yes, early voting starts very soon, but we got a long time between last night and Election Day. I mean, look at all the things that have happened. We're not even talking about the fact anymore that Donald Trump was nearly assassinated. I doubt the debate will be too much on the minds of voters come Election Day.
All right, thank you for listening, and thank you to all of our guests for sharing their perspectives and insights today. You can find Scott Jennings talking politics on CNN, or listen to his podcast, Flyover Country, for more news, analysis, and behind the scenes. Thanks also to Beth Silvers and Sarah Stewart Holland. Listen to their podcast, Pantsuit Politics, featured across national media and named one of Apple Podcasts' best shows of 2021. They're also the authors of 2 books, including Now What? How to Move Forward When We're Divided About Basically Everything. We have links to it all on our website. Go to thenewsworthy.com/show notes. And if you found this episode valuable, please be sure to share it with a friend. Of course, tune in to The Newsworthy again on Monday for our next 10-minute daily news roundup, keeping you in the know as you start the work week. Until then, have a great weekend.